Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars blur past the view screen as they jumped back to normal space near Earth. His crew had been out for 3 months exploring the outer rim of human space, where few ships ever went. The mission was simple enough. Map new systems and look for resources that Earth's growing colonies might need. What they found was something nobody expected. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker walked up beside him holding a datapad. With their final reports, she looked tired but excited about getting home. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez was already talking about the shore leave he planned to take with his family. Dr. Amanda Foster sat at her science station still studying the readings they had collected from the strange structure they discovered 2 weeks ago. The structure was massive and clearly very old. It floated dead in space around a dying star in a system that had no name. The metal it was made from was unlike anything they had seen before. The energy readings were off the charts, even though the thing appeared to be completely dead. Dr. Foster had managed to scan parts of it before they were forced to leave. Jake was about to order the crew to prepare for docking at Earth Station when the proximity alarm started screaming. 3 large ships appeared on their sensors, moving fast toward them. These were not human ships. The design was angular and covered in weapons that could easily destroy the Liberty in seconds. Council ships, Lisa said, checking her console. Valdorian, Empire design, military class. Jake felt his stomach drop. The Valdorian Empire was the military arm of the Galactic Council. They only showed up when there was serious trouble. Earth had been a probationary member of the Council for 50 years. Now, the relationship was always tense, with humans being treated like children who could not be trusted. The lead ship sent a transmission that appeared on the main screen. Admiral Zethkri of the Valdorian fleet looked down at them with cold reptilian eyes. His scales were dark green and his voice sounded like gravel when he spoke. "Human vessel Liberty, you will prepare to be boarded. Your crew will surrender all data and materials collected during your recent expedition. Any resistance will be met with immediate destruction." Jake looked at his crew. They all knew this was bad. The Council had never been this aggressive before. Something about their discovery had made the aliens very nervous. "Admiral, this is Captain Morrison. We are in human space conducting a legal survey mission. What authority do you have to board my ship?" Zethkri's eyes narrowed and his lip curled, showing sharp teeth. "The authority of the Galactic Council, which your species still serves. You will comply or you will be destroyed." The boarding was quick and efficient. Valdorian soldiers in powered armor swept through the ship, taking all their data and sealing. Off the cargo bay, where they had stored some small artifacts from the structure, Dr. Foster tried to protest, but the soldiers simply ignored her. Within an hour, they were gone, leaving the Liberty crew feeling violated and angry, but the worst was yet to come. Admiral Zethkri remained on the main screen and delivered a message that would change everything for humanity. "Your species has overstepped its bounds. The Council has decided that humans can no longer be trusted with the freedom you have been given. You will receive new terms for your continued membership in galactic civilization within 1 standard day. Compliance is not optional." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake ordered an immediate course for Earth at maximum speed. They needed to warn Earth's government about what was coming. 3 hours later, they docked at Earth Station, and Jake was rushed to an emergency meeting with President Helen Carter and her cabinet. The president was a former naval officer who had served in the colony wars before becoming a diplomat. She listened to Jake's report with a grim expression. Defense Secretary Ryan Brooks argued they should try to negotiate and find out what the Council wanted. Director of Colonial Affairs Sam Mitchell was already talking about what concessions Earth might have to make. But President Carter was thinking about something else entirely. The official Council ultimatum arrived exactly 24 hours later, delivered by High Magistrate Veltar himself. The tall, gray alien appeared on screens across Earth, and all human colonies reading the terms that would end human independence forever. The species known as humans will surrender all military vessels and weapons to Council control within 30 standard days. All human technology will be subject to Council oversight and approval. Human expansion beyond currently occupied systems is permanently forbidden. Humans will accept the status of client species under Council protection and guidance. Failure to comply will result in immediate expulsion from galactic civilization, complete trade embargo, and potential military action. The message ended with Veltar's cold stare as he waited for Earth's response. In government buildings across human, space emergency meetings began. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to negotiate, and a few talked about surrender. But in a classified lab on Luna, Dr. Amanda Foster was working with Earth's best scientists to decode the data she had secretly copied from the alien structure. What they were about to discover would change the course of galactic history. Dr. Amanda Foster had not slept for 3 days straight. The secret lab on Luna was hidden deep beneath the surface, where Council spy satellites could not detect what they were doing. She worked alongside Dr. Eric Chen, Earth's top theoretical physicist, and Dr. Maya Singh, the best xenoarchaeologist humanity had ever produced. The data she had secretly scanned from the alien structure was unlike anything they had ever seen. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Chen realized the mathematical patterns in the structure's design were based on principles that human science had only theorized about. The energy signatures suggested technology that was millions of years old, far predating the oldest known Council civilizations. This was not just another alien artifact. This was something from the dawn of galactic civilization itself. Dr. Singh focused on the symbolic markings they had recorded. The writing system was completely unknown, but the symbols seemed to carry meaning that went beyond simple language. They told stories of a race that had once ruled the entire galaxy with wisdom and power beyond imagination. These were the Precursors, a name that appeared in the oldest Council records, but always dismissed as myth. The real shock came when they decoded a section that described the current state of the galaxy. According to the Precursor records, the Council species were not the original inhabitants of their home worlds. They were refugees who had arrived after some great catastrophe and built their civilization on the ruins of something far greater. The entire foundation of Council authority was based on lies they had been telling for thousands of years. Captain Jake Morrison sat in on these briefings along with Intelligence Director Kate Williams. The implications were staggering. If this information was true, then the Council had been systematically destroying evidence of the Precursors for millennia to maintain their power. Every archaeological dig, every ancient site, every piece of technology that might reveal the truth had been classified or destroyed. Kate Williams had been investigating Council activities in human space for years. She had always suspected they were hiding something, but never imagined it was this big. Her network of informants in the outer colonies had reported strange Council expeditions to dead systems where they would spend weeks doing unknown work before leaving with their ships full of sealed cargo. The breakthrough that changed everything happened on the 4th day when Dr. Foster connected 2 pieces of data that had seemed unrelated. The Precursor technology was not just advanced, it was designed to be inherited. The structures they built contained instructions for other species to follow, paths to evolution and transcendence that the Council had been deliberately blocking. Dr. Chen's excitement was obvious as he explained what they had found. The Precursors had developed faster than light travel that did not require the hyperspace gates that the Council controlled. They had mastered energy manipulation that could power entire star systems. Most importantly, they had discovered how to transfer consciousness itself, achieving a form of digital immortality that made them nearly godlike. But the Precursors had not simply vanished as the Council claimed. They had evolved beyond physical form, leaving behind their technology and knowledge for species that were ready to inherit it. The Council had found this technology eons ago, and instead of following the path to transcendence, they had chosen to suppress it and rule over lesser species. Meanwhile, across human space, colonial governors and military commanders were preparing for war. Governor Alex Turner of New Carolina had been fighting pirates and hostile aliens for decades with little help from the Council. He knew that becoming a client species would mean the end of human expansion and probably the death of the outer colonies. Admiral Patricia Hayes commanded the Outer Rim Defense Force from her flagship stationed at the edge of human territory. She had seen Council ships avoid fighting dangerous aliens while human colonists were left to defend themselves. The idea of surrendering Earth's military to these cowards made her blood boil. President Carter called an emergency session of the Colonial Council where representatives from every human world could voice their opinions. The debate was fierce, with some colonies demanding immediate compliance to avoid destruction, while others called for total resistance. But when the scientific team presented their findings about the precursors, the mood in the room changed completely. The evidence was undeniable. The Council was not just demanding human submission, they were preventing humanity from reaching its true potential. The precursor technology could make humans independent of Council infrastructure and give them the power to explore and settle anywhere in the galaxy. Kate Williams presented intelligence reports showing that other species had been asking similar questions about galactic history. The aquatic Hydrians had been systematically excluded from Council leadership, despite being one of the oldest member species. The insectoid Thrakari had been forced to give up their homeworld's ancient sites to Council archaeologists. Even some of the Council species themselves had dissidents who questioned the official histories. Dr. Maya Singh made the most disturbing discovery when she found references to something called the Great Cleansing in the deepest parts of the precursor data. The Council had not just hidden the truth, they had actively hunted down and destroyed any species that got too close to discovering it. Entire civilizations had been wiped out or forced into client status to protect the Council's secrets. As the 30-day deadline approached, President Carter faced the most important decision in human history. The easy path was submission, accepting client species status and hoping the Council would treat humanity fairly. But the evidence suggested that would mean the end of human independence forever and the death of their potential as a species. The hard path was resistance, knowing that it would mean war against an enemy with thousands of years of experience and technology that seemed vastly superior. But they now knew that the Council's power was built on lies and that humanity had access to technology that could level the playing field. In the end, the decision was made not by politicians or generals, but by the scientific evidence that could not be ignored. Humanity had found proof that they were meant for something greater than servitude. The only question now was whether they had the courage to claim it. President Helen Carter stood in the Oval Office looking out at the night sky where she could see the lights of orbital defense platforms being activated for the first time in 50 years. The 30-day deadline was tomorrow, and her decision was made. Earth would not kneel before the Council's demands. She turned to face her cabinet and military leaders who had gathered for the final briefing before humanity's response was delivered. Operation Defiance is now active, she announced. We will not only resist the Council's ultimatum, but expose their lies to the entire galaxy. Captain Morrison, your team is authorized for immediate deployment. Jake Morrison had been reassigned. From exploration to black operations, his new team included Lieutenant Lisa Parker, who had volunteered for the dangerous mission, Sergeant First Class Danny O'Brien from Earth's Special Forces, and tech specialist Maria Santos, who could hack alien systems better than anyone in human space. Their job was to infiltrate Council territory and gather proof of the precursor sites the aliens had been hiding. The UES Phantom was not like any ship in the human fleet. Built in secret over the past 5 years, it used experimental stealth technology and was small enough to avoid most sensor sweeps. The ship could pass for civilian cargo hauler while carrying enough firepower to fight its way out of trouble. Most importantly, it was equipped with the modified precursor technology that Dr. Chen's team had been developing. Dr. Eric Chen worked around the clock in his lab beneath Colorado Springs, where the most advanced human scientists were pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The precursor data had given them insights into faster-than-light travel that did not require counsel. Controlled hyperspace gates. If they could perfect this technology, humanity could become completely independent of alien infrastructure. Defense Secretary Ryan Brooks had changed his mind about negotiation after seeing the evidence of counsel deception. He now coordinated with Admiral Patricia Hayes to implement Protocol Omega, a contingency plan that had been developed during humanity's expansion period. Hidden defense platforms that had been disguised as mining stations for decades suddenly came online. Civilian cargo ships received encrypted orders to report to military yards for emergency conversion to warships. The Kepler Mining Consortium controlled asteroid belts throughout human space, and their boss, Carlos Vega, had always been suspicious of Council motives. His miners worked in dangerous conditions, while Council ships avoided the outer systems entirely. When the call came for civilian support, Vega volunteered his entire fleet of heavy mining ships and their crews who knew how to fight in the vacuum of space. Ambassador Peter Young had been Earth's representative to the Council for 15 years. He knew their politics and their weaknesses better than any human alive. Instead of delivering President Carter's response through normal diplomatic channels, he requested a formal audience with the full Council Assembly. What he planned to say would either save humanity or start a war that would consume the galaxy. The Council chambers on the neutral world of Nexus Prime had not seen this much tension in centuries. Representatives from 12 ancient civilizations sat in judgment over a species they considered primitive and dangerous. High Magistrate Veltar presided over the assembly with the confidence of someone who had never been defied. When Ambassador B.K. Young took the floor, his words were broadcast not just to the Council, but to every human colony and many alien worlds that were watching to see how this crisis would unfold. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council. Young began, "I stand before you today not as a supplicant begging for mercy, but as the voice of a free species that refuses to accept slavery disguised as protection. Humanity has reviewed your generous offer of permanent servitude, and we respectfully decline." The reaction in the chamber was immediate. Council representatives began shouting in their various languages, while Veltar pounded his gavel demanding order. No species had ever rejected a council ultimatum in 3,000 years of galactic government. Furthermore, Young continued when the noise died down, "We call upon this body to explain why you have systematically destroyed evidence of precursor civilization for millennia. Why have you hidden the truth about galactic history from your own member species? And why do you fear what humanity might become if we follow the path the precursors left for us?" The chamber erupted in chaos. Some council members demanded immediate military action, while others called for Young's arrest. But the damage was done. The accusations were now part of the official record and being broadcast across the galaxy. On the planet Xerion, the oppressed Thrakari workers heard Young's words and began organizing strikes against their council overseers. The aquatic Hydrians, who had been excluded from council leadership for centuries, started demanding answers about their own suppressed history. Even among the council species themselves, dissidents began asking uncomfortable questions. Captain Morrison's team had already launched aboard the Phantom, heading for their first target in Council space. Intelligence Director Kate Williams had identified several star systems where unusual Council activity suggested hidden archaeological sites. Their mission was to gather evidence and broadcast it to the galaxy before the Council could stop them. Dr. Amanda Foster continued her work with the precursor artifacts, now focusing on their most startling discovery, The ancient technology was not just tools and weapons. It contained the collective knowledge and wisdom of a species that had transcended physical limitations. If humanity could access this information fully, they could leapfrog millions of years of normal evolution. Admiral Patricia Hayes received her orders and began deploying the human fleet in defensive positions around Earth and the core colonies. She knew the Council would respond with overwhelming force, but the modified precursor technology gave her ships capabilities that the aliens had never seen before. The first battle would tell them whether humanity could survive what was coming. The deadline passed with no response from Earth, except Ambassador Young's defiant speech. High Magistrate Veltar convened an emergency session of the Council Military Command. Admiral Zethkree of the Valdorian Empire advocated for immediate invasion, while the more cautious Zenthari Collective suggested one final diplomatic effort, but it was too late for diplomacy. Across the galaxy, other species were beginning to question Council authority for the first time in millennia. The precedent that humanity was setting could not be allowed to stand. If one species could successfully resist, others would follow and the entire structure of galactic government would collapse. The Council's decision was unanimous. Humanity would be made an example that would ensure no other species would ever dare to challenge their authority again. Captain Jake Morrison watched his stealth ship approach the dead system where Council forces had been operating in secret for decades. The Phantom's sensors detected massive structures hidden in the asteroid belt that matched precursor designs from Dr. Foster's data. This was exactly what they needed to prove the Council had been lying about galactic history. The team worked quickly to document everything they found. Maria Santos hacked into abandoned Council equipment and downloaded years of archaeological data. Danny O'Brien set up broadcasting equipment that would transmit their findings across multiple frequencies to ensure the Council could not block all of them. Lisa Parker coordinated with similar teams that had been sent to other systems. When they activated the transmission array, the evidence burst across the galaxy like a shockwave. Detailed scans of precursor ruins, Council documents discussing the suppression of ancient technology, and most damning of all, recordings of Council leaders discussing how to maintain their authority by keeping other species ignorant of their true potential. On the planet Zerion, Thrakari worker Kliksara heard the human transmission while laboring in the mineral processing plants that had made the Council wealthy for centuries. The evidence showed that his species' homeworld contained precursor sites that had been stripped bare by Council archaeologists. The anger that had been building for generations finally exploded into open rebellion. Ambassador Peter Young operated from Babylon Station, the neutral trading hub where representatives of dozens of species gathered to conduct business outside Council oversight. The station's administrator was a pragmatic alien named Torth, who cared more about profit than politics. When Young offered to pay in rare metals for broadcasting privileges, Torth agreed without asking questions. The broadcasts from Morrison's team reached every corner of the galaxy despite Council attempts to jam the signals. Young coordinated with dissidents from other species who had been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. The aquatic Hydrians had always suspected they were being excluded from important decisions. The insectoid Mantari had lost 3 colony worlds to mysterious Council projects that were never explained. Dr. Maya Singh's analysis of the new data revealed the scope of Council deception. They had not just hidden precursor technology, they had actively prevented other species from evolving beyond certain limits. Genetic manipulation, consciousness transfer, and energy mastery were all capabilities that the precursors had intended for their inheritors, but the Council had declared them forbidden. Carlos Vega and the Kepler Mining Consortium became crucial to the growing resistance. His ships could travel to systems that military vessels could not reach without attracting attention. His miners were already used to working in dangerous conditions, and many of them had grudges against Council bureaucrats who treated them like disposable labor. The first direct confrontation came when Admiral Patricia Hayes received word that Council forces were moving to blockade the outer human colonies. The Battle of Titan's Gate would become legendary in galactic history, but at the time it was simply a desperate fight for survival. The Council fleet that arrived at Titan's Gate was massive by human standards. 3 dreadnoughts supported by dozens of cruisers and destroyers, all equipped with weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. Admiral Zethkri commanded from his flagship expecting to crush human resistance in a matter of hours. But the human ships that met them were not the same vessels the Council remembered. Dr. Chen's modifications using precursor technology had given them capabilities that defied everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare. Human ships could phase shift through shields, manipulate gravity to avoid weapons fire, and generate energy bursts that overloaded Council defensive systems. War correspondent Nicole Turner broadcast the battle live from her ship at the edge of the combat zone. Her reports reached not just human colonies, but alien worlds across the galaxy, where beings watched in amazement as the supposedly primitive humans defeated forces that had seemed invincible for thousands of years. The victory at Titan's Gate sent shockwaves through the Council hierarchy. High Magistrate Veltar called emergency sessions to discuss how humanity had acquired such advanced technology. The Valdorian Empire demanded immediate military reinforcement, while the Zenthari Collective began quietly exploring diplomatic options. But the Council's unity was fracturing. The Hydrian representative finally spoke up during a closed session, demanding to know why his people had been excluded from decisions about precursor technology. The Mantari delegate produced records showing that their lost colonies had contained ancient ruins that were classified above their security clearance. On dozens of worlds, the evidence broadcast by Morrison's team sparked uprisings and protests. Species that had accepted Council authority for millennia began demanding answers about their own suppressed histories. The Thrakari rebellion on Zerion spread to other industrial worlds. The normally peaceful Deltari started asking uncomfortable questions about archaeological sites on their homeworld. Intelligence Director Kate Williams coordinated with alien resistance cells through encrypted communications that the Council could not intercept. Her network grew daily as more species joined what was becoming a galaxy-wide movement for freedom and truth. The most shocking revelation came when Dr. Amanda Foster decoded a precursor message that had been hidden in the deepest layers of their technology. The ancient beings had not simply evolved beyond physical form, they had left specific instructions for species that proved worthy of inheritance. The tests were designed to identify races that valued truth over comfort and freedom over security. Humanity had passed the first test by choosing resistance over submission. The Thrakari passed by rising up against their oppressors despite the odds. The Hydrians passed by demanding inclusion instead of accepting exclusion. Species across the galaxy were proving themselves worthy of the precursor legacy. The Council's worst nightmare was becoming reality. The authoritarian structure that had maintained order for 3,000 years was crumbling as species after species chose independence over servitude. The lies that had held the galaxy together were being exposed one by one. Captain Morrison's team completed their mission by discovering the most important precursor site yet, a facility that contained not just technology, but the preserved consciousness of precursor individuals who could directly testify about the Council's deception. When this evidence was broadcast, it would be impossible for anyone to deny the truth. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of Council dominance was ending, and a new era of freedom and exploration was beginning. But first, humanity and its new allies would have to survive the desperate counterattack of beings who would rather destroy the galaxy than lose their power over it. The Council's response to humanity's defiance and the galaxy-wide uprising was swift and brutal. Admiral Zethkri led a massive armada toward Earth with orders to make an example that would terrify any other species considering rebellion. The siege of Earth began with hundreds of Council warships surrounding the human home system and demanding immediate surrender. President Helen Carter moved her government to the underground command center beneath the Colorado Mountains, where Earth's military had been preparing for this moment for decades. The facility could withstand direct orbital bombardment and contained enough supplies to coordinate the defense for months. She refused every Council demand for surrender, knowing that giving up now would doom not just humanity, but every species fighting for freedom across the galaxy. Admiral Patricia Hayes commanded the fleet defending Earth's outer perimeter from her flagship positioned near Jupiter. Her ships used the gas giant's massive gravity well and radiation to mask their movements, while striking at Council forces with hit-and-run tactics. The modified precursor technology made her vessels nearly invisible to enemy sensors, until they attacked. Captain Jake Morrison had returned from Council space with evidence that changed everything, but now he found himself leading deep strike missions against Council infrastructure. His team aboard the Phantom targeted communication relays and supply depots that kept the enemy fleet functioning. Each successful raid weakened the siege and bought more time for Earth's defenders. The tide of battle began to turn during the Battle of Luna, where Lisa Parker, now commanding the UES Phoenix, pioneered the use of fully integrated precursor phase shift technology. Her ship could literally pass through solid matter for brief periods, allowing it to phase through Council shields and strike their command vessels from inside their own defensive perimeters. The battle became a rout when Parker's tactics were copied by other human captains. Council ships that had seemed invincible found themselves helpless against enemies who could appear anywhere and strike without warning. Admiral Zethkri's flagship was destroyed when 3 human destroyers phased through its armor and detonated their weapons inside the ship's reactor core. But the real turning point came when several alien species openly joined the fight on humanity's side. The Thrakari rebellion had spread across dozens of worlds, and their industrial ships proved surprisingly effective in combat. The Hydrian fleet emerged from the ocean worlds they had been protecting for centuries. Even some Council species began switching sides as evidence of the deception spread. Dr. Eric Chen achieved his greatest breakthrough during the darkest hours of the siege, when Earth's orbital defenses were failing and it seemed the planet might fall. Working with precursor consciousness transfer technology, he successfully uploaded his own mind to a quantum computer network and then downloaded it back into his body. The implications were staggering. Death itself could be conquered. When Chen's achievement was broadcast across the galaxy, it triggered massive uprisings on dozens of worlds as species realized what the Council had been keeping from them. The promise of digital immortality and unlimited expansion of consciousness was exactly what the precursors had intended for their inheritors. The Kepler Mining Consortium under Carlos Vega became the backbone of the Resistance supply network. His heavy mining ships could carry troops and equipment to any system in the galaxy, while their industrial equipment was easily converted to weapons that could crack open Council strongholds. Vega himself led raids on Council mining operations, freeing slave workers from a dozen different species. Intelligence Director Kate Williams coordinated the Resistance network that now spanned thousands of worlds. Her agents were embedded in Council governments, military units, and civilian populations. The information they provided allowed Resistance forces to stay one step ahead of Council counterattacks. The Council's unity completely collapsed when the Hydrian delegate formally withdrew his species from the galactic government and joined the Resistance. Within days, half the Council species had either switched sides or declared neutrality. The authoritarian structure that had ruled for millennia was dissolving as the lies that held it together were exposed. High Magistrate Veltar made one final desperate attempt to maintain power by ordering the complete destruction of Earth and all human colonies. But his own military commanders refused to carry out genocide, and several Council fleets mutinied rather than participate in the extermination of an entire species. The war's final phase saw resistance forces going on the offensive. Captain Morrison led combined human and alien fleets in strikes against the remaining Council strongholds. Dr. Amanda Foster worked with alien scientists to activate precursor facilities that had been hidden for millions of years. The ancient technology awakened at sites across the galaxy, providing the resistance with capabilities that made them unstoppable. The Battle of Nexus Prime ended Council resistance once and for all. The neutral world, where galactic government had been centered for 3,000 years, fell to a combined assault by humans, Thrakari, Hydrians, and rebel Council forces. The surrender ceremony was broadcast to every world in the galaxy as High Magistrate Veltar formally dissolved the old government. But victory came at a terrible cost. Billions had died in the fighting across hundreds of worlds. Ancient cities had been destroyed and entire star systems left in ruins. The galaxy would take generations to recover from the war that had torn apart the old order. President Carter addressed the galaxy from the ruins of the Council chambers on Nexus Prime. Her words would be remembered as the founding moment of a new age of freedom and exploration. She announced the formation of the Galactic Liberation Alliance based on precursor principles of voluntary association, shared knowledge, and unlimited potential for growth. The new government would have no central authority that could dominate other species. Instead, it would be a confederation of free worlds working together for mutual benefit. Any species could join as equals regardless of their technology level or cultural development. The age of authoritarian rule was over. Ambassador Peter Young became the first Secretary General of the Free Galactic Alliance with representatives from every species that had fought for freedom. His first act was to declassify all Council records about precursor sites and technology, making the knowledge available to anyone who wanted to study it. The galaxy stood at the threshold of a new age. The precursor path to transcendence was open to all species brave enough to follow it. But first, the wounds of war had to heal, and the work of building a better civilization had to begin. 5 years after the fall of the Council, the galaxy was transformed beyond recognition. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in the main laboratory of the Precursor Research Institute on Earth, watching as scientists from dozens of species worked together to unlock mysteries that had been hidden for millions of years. The breakthrough that would change everything came not through military conquest or political maneuvering, but through the patient work of beings who chose cooperation over domination. The discovery happened when Foster's team activated a massive precursor communication array that had been hidden beneath the surface of a dead world in the galactic core. The facility had been dormant for eons, waiting for species worthy of its message to prove themselves through trials of courage, wisdom, and sacrifice. When the array came online, it broadcast across every inhabited system in the galaxy. The message was simple but revolutionary: complete instructions for consciousness transfer, digital immortality, and transcendence beyond physical limitations. The precursors had indeed evolved beyond material form, but they had left behind everything needed for other species to follow the same path. The transmission also contained testimony from preserved precursor consciousness that revealed the full scope of Council deception. For 3,000 years, the galactic government had systematically suppressed any species that came close to achieving transcendence. They had destroyed civilizations, hidden archaeological evidence, and maintained their power through fear and ignorance. High Magistrate Veltar, now imprisoned on a rehabilitation world, finally confessed the truth during his trial. The Council leaders had discovered precursor technology millions of years ago, but chose to use it for control rather than growth. They feared that if other species achieved transcendence, their own authority would become meaningless. The confession was broadcast across the galaxy, providing final closure for the billions who had suffered under Council rule. But the new galactic government was more interested in building the future than punishing the past. Most council leaders were offered the choice of rehabilitation and integration into the new order rather than execution. Captain Jake Morrison took command of the first Joint Species Exploration Fleet, pushing beyond the edge of the galaxy to discover what lay in the vast emptiness between galactic clusters. His crew included beings from every major species, working together to map new territories and search for other civilizations that might benefit from precursor knowledge. The UES Transcendence was the most advanced ship ever built, incorporating technology from a dozen different species along with fully integrated precursor systems. It could travel faster than light without using hyperspace gates, generate its own energy from quantum fluctuations, and support its crew for decades of deep space exploration. Dr. Eric Chen led the Transcendence project from a facility on Luna, where volunteers from every species came to attempt the consciousness transfer process. Not everyone chose digital immortality. Many preferred to remain in biological form while gaining access to expanded mental capabilities. The choice was always voluntary, and the process was completely reversible. The success rate for consciousness transfer improved dramatically as more species contributed their knowledge. The Hydrians provided insights into fluid quantum states, the Mantari offered understanding of collective consciousness, and even former council species shared their accumulated wisdom freely. President Carter, now in her second term as Earth's leader, worked with Secretary General Peter Young to establish the new Galactic Constitution. The document enshrined the principles of voluntary association, informed consent, and unlimited growth potential that the precursors had advocated. No species could be forced to join the alliance or prevented from leaving if they chose. The economic transformation was as dramatic as the political changes. Carlos Vega's mining operations expanded throughout the galaxy as barriers to trade and exploration disappeared. The wealth that had been concentrated in Council Core worlds was redistributed to developing systems that had been exploited for millennia. Intelligence Director Kate Williams transitioned from coordinating resistance networks to managing peaceful information exchange between species. Her organization helped newly contacted civilizations understand galactic history and choose their own path forward without coercion or manipulation. The most remarkable change was in the younger generation. Human children learned alongside young aliens in schools that taught precursor philosophy as well as traditional subjects. They grew up seeing the galaxy as a place of infinite possibility rather than controlled territory divided by ancient prejudices. Dr. Maya Singh established archaeological expeditions to precursor sites throughout the galaxy, now free to study them without council interference. Each discovery revealed new aspects of the ancient civilization's wisdom and technology. The excavations became joint projects where species contributed their unique perspectives to understanding the past. The Thrakari, freed from industrial slavery, revealed themselves to be master engineers and artists. Their cities became showcases of beautiful architecture that blended function with aesthetic perfection. The rebellion that had started in mineral processing plants evolved into a renaissance of creativity and innovation. The Hydrians emerged, from their ocean worlds to share aquatic technologies that revolutionized life support systems and underwater exploration. Their peaceful philosophy influenced galactic diplomacy as conflicts were resolved through meditation and consensus rather than force. Even the Valdorian Empire, stripped of its military dominance, found new purpose in exploration and defense. Admiral Patricia Hayes worked with former enemies to establish joint patrol fleets that protected trade routes and assisted ships in distress regardless of species or origin. The final scene of the transformation took place on Earth during the 5th anniversary celebration of liberation. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in New Geneva where the Galactic Constitution had been signed. President Carter, now showing her age but still vibrant with purpose, delivered the keynote address. 5 years ago, the Council tried to make us kneel, she said to the assembly of beings who had once been enemies and were now partners in building a better galaxy. They offered us the security of slavery and the comfort of ignorance. We chose the uncertainty of freedom and the challenge of truth. She gestured toward the mixed crowd of humans and aliens, young and old, biological and digital consciousness existing in synthetic bodies. Look around you and see what we have built, together. The precursors left us a path to transcendence, but we chose to walk it together rather than alone. The celebration continued for days, as beings from across the galaxy shared their cultures, technologies, and dreams for the future. Children who had never known war played games that their parents' generation could never have imagined. Scientists collaborated on projects that would have been impossible under council restrictions. As Carter watched the festivities from her balcony, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The Council's attempt to blackmail humanity had instead awakened the galaxy to its true potential. The threats and ultimatums had backfired completely, creating the unity and determination needed to overthrow millennia of oppression. The new galaxy was far from perfect. There were still conflicts between species, technical challenges to overcome, and philosophical questions about the nature of consciousness and identity. But for the first time in galactic history, these problems were being addressed through cooperation and open inquiry rather than authoritarian decree. The final words of Carter's address became the unofficial motto of the new age. They tried to make us kneel. Instead, we taught the galaxy how to stand.